Hello, I'm Jyotika. Welcome to Excelling Psychology. In today's class, we'll go over Section C for Paper 3, Variant 2, October-November 2024. In the past two videos in this series, I've already covered Section A, Clinical Psychology, and Section B, Consumer Psychology. This Section C, in fact, I've covered before also on my channel few months ago. Same paper, same section I've covered before. But that time I had taken a different approach to it. Fully detailed answers I had written step by step with you in the video. So you might find some differences in the answers that I had written that time and the ones which I'm showing you now, but both are equally correct. In fact, I would say you could watch both the videos and you could get multiple ways of answering the same questions if you watch both. That time the videos used to be lengthier. Now I'm keeping them little briefer, and also for good practice since I'm covering all the sections right from AS to A levels in the October November series. So then I thought I should include this one also. Before I begin with this video, I want you to know that I am a private tutor for psychology. Since more than 10 years, I'm tutoring Cambridge A level students. I'm also a school teacher and subject expert for a school for the same. If you want to know more details about me, the details are available on a link which I'm leaving in the description box and pinned comment below. And my personal contact details also available there. Only if you want to schedule your classes with me or you want any correspondence work, you can contact me on those numbers. Otherwise, if you just want to talk about these videos, any suggestions, feedback, you can leave them in the comments box below. Okay, so let's look at the first question that had come in section C. Camilla's father is told by his doctor that he needs to take pills every day. Camilla does not know if her father is adhering to the doctor's advice. Suggest two ways in which Camilla could check whether her father has been taking his pills every day. Okay, first thing to do is when you read a question, just bring to mind the topic area from where the question is coming. Here it's very obvious it's coming from adherence. They've used the word adherence in the question. And then within which specific subtopic, measures of adherence. So two ways in which she could check meaning measures of adherence will be relevant here. So bring two methods or strategies to your mind and then only start answering the question. So first be fixed on which two ways you want to talk about. It is about pills. So again, a very direct hint is there. So the first thing that comes to my mind is pill counting. So first when I'm writing the answer, I'll just name pill counting. Then of course I will explain it with reference to Camilla. Next, some one more strategy I have to give and I have to link to Camilla. What comes to my mind is medication dispensers. They were there along with pill counting. So I would take that one and I would explain in her situation. Now, in health psychology, just as in consumer, there are lots of those little studies, those summary studies. So if you want to take something from there, also there's no issue. Like there is the track cap study in this section. So you could suggest a track cap also that Camilla could use that. So you could be drawing knowledge from there. That's fine as long as it's relevant to measuring adherence. Now, as always, when they give you a STEM question, it becomes AO2. STEM meaning some situation is given and they're asking you about it. Don't treat it like an AO1. That tends to be the biggest mistake. So what students will do is they'll identify two methods, like say pill counting, and then in general, what is pill counting, they will just explain that. See, if they just wanted to know what is pill counting, that is how they would have phrased the question. What is pill counting? 2 marks. Why have they bothered to give you something about Camilla, her father? Like, why is the whole situation there? Because they want you to refer to it and answer. So make sure you do that. Treat it like an AO2 question. Okay, so I will not read the entire model answer. We don't have time for that in this lesson. You can pause the video anytime and see the full model answer. But I'll just pick up a few points to show you exactly how and what I have written here. See, first I've named the technique that Camilla could use pill counting. And then I have explained with reference to Camilla, her father, like engaging with the situation. Using wording from there, I've explained what is pill counting, not just in general. So what she can do is she can calculate the number of pills that should remain if her father has been taking how much the doctor is prescribing. Then I have mentioned the next method in the same way, medication dispenser, and then explained how she could make use of it. So she could store the medications of her father according to the day of the week in the box or the dispenser, and then she can keep checking whether he's taking the pills day wise or not. So something as simple as that. Alternatively, if you're giving track cap, you could also suggest that she could arrange for that special bottle for her father, and then whenever he opens the lid or the cap, on a software she can track whether he's opening it a sufficient number of times as the number of times prescribed to take the medication. Just make sure to follow the structure which I have said. Okay, we know in paper 3 always after a scenario type of question we have an issues and debates question. So that is next. They're telling us there are two practitioner styles, doctor centered or directive, and patient centered or sharing. Outline one of these practitioner styles in relation to an individual explanation. Here there are two very common mistakes. One, to just talk about the practitioner style, like just define it without talking about how it serves as an individual explanation. So, of course, you have to link it to individual explanation. That is a requirement of the question. So, no point in just defining it. That's one thing. Second thing is, uh, not elaborating sufficiently. Like what many students will do is just pick up one of the sites and then give a very rough explanation, a very tautological one. For example, they would say sharing style is based on individual explanation because it is focused on the individual patient, something like that. So the point just goes in circles. Just going on repeating the word individual does not help to define how it is an individual expression. The how is the key part. So you need to explain that clearly. One thing is either side is correct, whether you say directed or sharing. Either one you can take as long as you can justify it. So, say if you are taking sharing style, your friend is taking directed style. As long as both of you are giving correct reasoning for your respective answers, both of you will get full marks. So, there's no thing like one correct answer is there. How you have to structure this answer is just name the style which you're picking up. First, directly name it, don't go in circles. Don't make the examiner read everything and in the last you mention this is the style. Begin off with this is the style. And then after that, support that style which you have named. Like clearly explain why or how it is an individual explanation. Now, because it is relevant here, we'll just quickly remember what is an individual explanation. Anytime we say any behavior is because of factors internal to an individual, like something within the individual. That is an individual explanation. So, when it comes to these styles, practitioner styles, they're about consultation, how the patient consults the doctor. Now, if the doctor is adopting a consulting style, either one of these, which is somehow depending on factors within themselves or within the patient, something to do with individual internal factors, then it will be considered as an individual explanation. Okay, so think along these lines to write your answer. Like here, you can see the example which I have given. I have taken sharing style, so I'm saying sharing style supports individual explanation. Why? Reason also very clearly I've outlined, because the patient's cognitions and perceptions of the illness are taken into account. The thoughts of the patient about his own illness, they are within him. So it's an individual explanation. That is what I have given here. This is not compulsory what I've done next, but just to further explain, I have given an example. Like supposing the doctor asks the patients what they think is wrong. So then he's taking the patient's perspective into account, because the patient will say what is wrong and based on that further consultation will move. So that is how it serves an individual explanation. There's a part B to this. Part B, again typical structure, what we expect, whatever is asked in part A, some strength or weakness of that. So in this case they've asked for a weakness. Again, the most common and the mistake which you should totally avoid, just giving a general weakness, not regarding that individual explanation specific it has to be. So again, many students will just read the question very quickly, or they don't know how to apply the weakness to individual explanation. They've not practiced that way. So just any general weakness which they have learned of practitioner style, they'll give. See, if it does not relate to individual explanation, you're getting 0 marks, even if it is a correct weakness. So make sure you link it. How to think about this? It's very obvious, actually, it's very simple to answer. If we are siding with individual factors, like we are saying this consultation is dependent on something within the individual, What is a problem with that? Are we missing on something? Think on those terms. Can there be other reasons? So, on the lines of reductionism or oversimplification. There are other possibilities also. After giving you the model answer, I'll discuss those. How to structure this? Same structure for all two markers. Name the weakness first and then explain it with an example or just elaborate further on it. Here, there's no stems. You can give any example of your own. See, so, like I told you, it's very obvious. First, you can say it ignores situational influences on consultation. Like even outside external factors can influence how consultation goes, not only individual factors. So then I've explained with an example further. When it comes to, say, a doctor wants to take a sharing style, they understand that it is democratic in nature. But unfortunately, in the clinic, it's very busy. Too many patients are there to attend to. So, despite wanting to adopt that style, they are not able to. So, that's a situational constraint or a situational explanation that needs to be considered. You can give other examples also. Besides this, something to do with funding resources available. Like the doctor wants to take a sharing style again, but uh, they don't have that permission from higher authorities of the hospital. Like the hospital has very rigid rules on which style they have to follow. Or alternatively, they are working under resource constraints. So that much time which they have to devote, which translates to how much they can earn from every patient. Maybe they are not allowed to give that from the larger diktats of the hospital, something like that. So, just pointing out how individual explanations is reductionist because situational factors are not considered. Other possibilities, weaknesses when it comes to individual explanations, like one which comes to mind is it might result in some sort of patient blaming. It can go into a negative territory of, prejudice. So, for example, if say patient is not able to describe their condition well, they don't have good insight, so they can't share much with the practitioner, it might end up with any failure of the consultation getting blamed on the patient, which would not be fair to the patient, like which could aggravate their condition further and could lead to psychological distress. So you could give something like that also. Just note that the alternative weakness that I'm suggesting, that is also to do with individual explanation only. It's not something general that I am giving, not just about any weakness of the particular style. So that is key. Let's look at the next question. This is again situation based. Hanif visits his doctor and reports that he has pains in his chest. When his doctor examines him, she notices that Hanif has a number of abdominal scars from previous surgery. The doctor cannot find anything physically wrong with Hanif, and she thinks that Hanif may have Munchausen syndrome. Suggest why the doctor may think Hanif has Munchausen syndrome. So now we've understood whenever we have a question like this, we first think of the relevant section. So in the first chapter itself, we have all the features of malingering and Munchausen syndrome. This question is coming from there. And the study that is relevant here is Alim and Ajarim study, case study of a lady who had Munchausen's. So both those things we can keep in view and then we can decide how we want to answer. It is for 4 marks. Ideally give two reasons, two possibilities of factors which are indicating that this patient has Munchausen. Because if you take one and you try to expand on it, it can be difficult to give as many as 4 points to justify 4 marks. So you could pick up some 2 points and give 2 marks for each. Plus, when you're answering this question, you can give general features what you've learnt of Munchausen, whichever you can see in this case. Or alternatively, Alim and Ajarim study, the lady showed some symptoms which you're seeing in this case, like similar to that. You can point out that as well. When you consider the summary study also in the section, you just broaden your horizons. Your vision becomes broader. You can gather more factors which you can relate to a given situation. That's why I always suggest bring the study to mind. Even if you don't remember the name of the authors, but some relevant procedural detail or finding, you can link to what is given here. And I don't want to repeat what I said for the first question, but everything applies here also. Engaging with the STEM and all, make sure you do that. So let's see the model answer. One thing which we know about Munchausen in general is that self-induced symptoms need to be there. Deliberately falsified symptoms need to be there. Means either the person is totally lying about their symptoms or they're inducing their symptoms so that they can take on the patient role. Now, to link it with the given case, Hanif's case, it seems that he is deliberately falsifying his symptoms. We will explain it further, but before that, I have taken Aleem and Ajarim's case study. Why? Because one particular detail in this is very similar to what is there in Aleem and Ajarim study. In fact, I feel the one who has phrased this question for the paper setter, has actually been very inspired from that study. That's why I felt it suitable to name. It's not compulsory to name the study. In that case, what had happened was the lady had undergone multiple surgeries and she had many scars, which the doctors noticed. And she was claiming of repeated abscesses. Of course, towards then we come to know she is only injecting fecal matter, because of which she is getting those swellings. Now, in this case also, if you see, Hanif has lot of abdominal scars. I think, I'm not able to remember right now exactly, but even in Aleem and Ajarim's case, there was abdominal surgery that the lady had undergone and she had a scar in her stomach region. So something very similar is this. At least the scars being there from surgery is directly taken from there. So that's why I've named that study also. And then to justify, like when I'm saying it could be deliberately falsified or self-induced, Hanif is most probably having a pattern of frequent hospital visits. See, they have told us he's undergoing surgery many times. He's having number of scars. They have not told us that, he must be visiting hospitals frequently and all, but that can be deduced from what is given here. It seems very obvious from the level of detail given over here. So I mentioned that if this is the case, considering what is given here, very likely that he's having Munchausen, because it relates with what the patient was doing in Aleem and Ajarim also. And then one more reason, like I told you, can give two reasons for 4 marks. Munchausen's patients, they keep on moving between hospitals. Again, that's not directly stated in the question. That's why I keep on using the term if in the answer. But it seems, looking at the description, that even he must be visiting many doctors or going to many hospitals. So then, for that reason also, second reason, besides falsifying visiting doctors very often, it appears that he does have Munchausen syndrome. My arrangement this time is not as straightforward as for the first question, like one reason is this, second reason is this. You can put it down that way. Only why I have not phrased the answer that way is because they've asked why the doctor may think he has Munchausen. They've not said suggest two reasons why. So then even I have followed the tone of the question only in answering. Okay, there's a part B to this also. Explain one weakness of the diagnostic features of Munchausen. They haven't asked us to relate with the scenario, so we don't need to. Part A, clearly they wanted us to relate. They mentioned Hanif in part A. Here they have not mentioned Hanif, so we just have to give the weakness. This is AO3 question. Also, here they haven't suggested which type of weakness we have to give. It's a broad question. Just give any weakness of Munchausen's symptoms. So we can take literally about any. So one example I will show you which I've written here, and then I'll give you other possibilities. See, one thing when it comes to symptoms, most obvious weakness, first I've named it and then explained. We are assuming that there is going to be deception on part of the patient, like they're going to be fabricating their symptoms somehow. But then distinguishing that in practice is very difficult, because the patient is having genuine medical problems or not can be difficult to determine. There have been so many cases in which initially doctors can't see any underlying physiological problem, so they assume that the symptoms being reported are fake. But then later on, they discover that indeed there is really a physical problem underlying, only it was not showing up in their diagnostic tests, or that it took some time to show, like there were subtle problems. The patient might be a little sensitive, showing the symptoms very early, but later on the underlying problem also intensified to an extent that now they are able to see what is the underlying problem. So working on the assumption that right now there is no physiological basis and the patient is still showing symptoms can be misleading for the doctors themselves. That is a problem with the diagnostic criteria of Munchausen's. You can also give another weakness, like it is overlapping to some extent with malingering. As we know, malingering is deliberate. For some ulterior motive, the patient pretends to be ill. In Munchausen, the patient just wants to take on a sick role. There is no greed as such involved, or no for a wrong kind of incentive that the patient is trying to obtain. But because the behaviors exhibited are so similar in both, that distinguishing the motive can be very difficult. And you can add to that that when someone's doing it deliberately, like when they are malingering, they would not be open on a self report to admit that they are malingering. Like, I'm not going to tell the doctor that, see, purposely I'm telling you I have these symptoms because I'm going to get some monetary benefit, you know. So then, how to find out that the patient's motive is to malinger, to gain wrong advantages? So, very difficult again in practice to distinguish between who's malingering and who's having Munchausen syndrome. So, something like that also you can give in the answer. Okay, so this completes the smaller questions in section C. Now we can come to the 6 mark. Okay, it was very good 6 marker on this paper, simple one. Only thing is, it's simple provided you've been doing two things. One, which I always say, memorize all the scale psychometric tests which are there in the syllabus, whichever options you're doing, because very exact details have to be given. So I keep on emphasizing to my students, especially for paper 4, you must memorize all details of all skills. Like supposing you're doing clinical, in that also many skills are there: BDI, BIPI, GAD-7. So same way for health also you have to do that. So if you've been doing that, this one is easy to answer in the sense you can get high marks. Second thing, I don't, these type of questions, very common tendency to, try to bluff on the answer, frankly speaking. So I don't remember studying any measure of stress. So let me just write anything that I know about type A personality. You know, generally we all have an idea what is type A and type B. So I'll just throw in anything into the answer. That approach does not help. Very specifically, they're asking you here measures of stress. So anything you give from the theory of type A and type B, that will be acceptable. That is not the case. You have to give very specifically the measure, the psychometric test that is used to determine whether someone has a type A personality or not. For beating around the bush, you're not going to get marks. Same way, Holmes and Rahe, that many students know that it is a scale, SRRS, that is only how it's covered. But again, didn't learn it well, didn't put the effort to memorize. I thought if it will come in the options for paper 4, like if it will be still left over for paper 4, then I will learn about it, then becomes very difficult to answer. So all boils down to have a serious approach, be learning properly from the beginning only, then you don't get into trouble. When it comes to, again, I won't be able to read everything, but Friedman and Rosenhan's type A personality, it is the Jenkins activity survey that you need to specify. I'm not very sure, I don't remember, but I think in other course companions there could be other tests also which are suggested. See, Friedman and Rosenhan themselves, they have not given a test. So then some course companions will suggest one test given by some other researchers, someone might suggest some other. But most popular is Jenkins activity survey for measuring whether someone's type A or type B. So I've taken that one. Then just have to give a few details on what was the background, how it was developed. Like initially, the way of going about was taking interviews to find out people have type A or type B. But then, for convenience, other researchers, Jenkins et al., they came up with the test. These many items are there. The results can tell us whether the person is type A, type B, or combination. Whatever details you know about JS, basically Jenkins activity survey, you need to put it down over here. So that is what I have done. Like in this answer, there's nothing much to understand also. It's more about specifying as many details as possible. It's quite a technical answer, I would say. And then SRRS, Holmes and Rahe, that is properly then the syllabus, no difference will be then course companions, whichever textbook you're referring to. For the SRRS, you must have learnt about how the scores are calculated in terms of LCUs, life change units, and what sort of items are there, which type of events people asked about, what are the cutoffs, when do we consider someone has low stress, moderate stress, high stress. So those details you need to give here. So very straightforward, only base error should not be. Then what I mean by base error is giving the theory instead of giving the measure, because in the syllabus type A, type B theory is also there and measure is also there. So if you're going to give type A, type B theory and go into the description of who is a type A person, who is a type B person, that's not what the question is asking you for. On the paper, the examiner will mark NAQ, not answering the question, and they will give you 0. Okay, so definitely pause this one and read it. 10 marker, as you know, always comes from the 6 marker only. So whatever is given in 6 marker, they'll ask you to evaluate that only over here. So they've given you again the measures. The named issue is questionnaires. See, if you need a detailed explanation of how you should answer a 10 marker, structuring, what to include, what to exclude, that is beyond the scope of this video, but in previous videos. Paper 3 videos, I told you the lengthy one which I've done for this also, and how to answer 10 marker type of videos. You can find them on the A2 playlist for health also, for other options also. Go over that and see exactly what you have to include. Right now, I'm just going to explain as much as is necessary to understand how to answer this question. They've named questionnaires, so I begin with that. For good analysis, one principle very important, cover both the topics given in every point. So when it comes to questionnaires, cover JS also and SRRS also. And then whichever two issues and debates you choose of your own to give besides questionnaires, in those also repeat the same things. Wherever possible, contrast the two skills to get high marks, that takes your answer to level 5. Alternatively, give counterpoints wherever possible, so to show that you can do a balanced analysis, again takes your answer to level 5. When it comes to questionnaires, a good thing for both, given that they are questionnaires, is that they are very practical. So whether we take JS or whether we take SRRS, why they're very practical is because there are fixed scoring systems. So whichever psychologist is using it, they just have to follow the given cutoffs to interpret what is a person standing on stress. So very objectively, they can come to know about an individual's stress levels without any bias, and they can go about doing it quickly also, which makes it efficient and practical. But of course, as a counter, because these are self-reports, either memory distortion can take place or social desirability. Like for example, the SRR is particularly, I have taken that for example, it very effectively shows the point. It's asking people about a lot of major events that have taken place in their life over the years, like over 2 years, I think. So in that case, people might not remember that much to be able to report it. And then if they are missing out something, then the total scores that are coming out don't remain valid. So that is an issue of self-report. You can emphasize that because they are retrospective self-reports, more so this problem is there. Then I always take relevant issues, as you must be knowing, from the syllabus. So for this one, the remaining two issues for this topic in the syllabus, they have mentioned individual situational explanations are relevant and idiographic nomothetic. They have named some others also, but I thought these two are best. So as far as individual situation is concerned, I'm able to directly contrast the two measures. So I've taken that approach. If I take JS, type A, B personality, that is focusing on individual factors of stress. Means what that scale is assessing is whether the person's own competitiveness, over ambition, tendency to dominate, those things are leading to stress. So the assumption is that stress is emerging from factors within an individual. But directly in contrast, if we see the SRRS, that assumes that life events which are taking place in an individual's life, and especially if multiple events are taking place, they're likely to be stressed. So we are attributing stress to life events. So that is taking a situational explanation. For further analysis, I have also considered then is it good or bad that they are taking individual and situational explanations. As such, just contrasting them is also good analysis, but just for deeper analysis, instead of taking a counterpoint, I've taken a limitation of both of them supporting like exclusively individual or situational explanations. The fact is that when only one side is supported, be it individual or situational, we are taking a reductionist approach. JS is reductionist because it's attributing all of stress to the individual's own type A behaviors. And SRRS in the same vein is reductionist because it's assuming only because of life events the individual is stressed. So both are ignoring what the other one is considering. That makes them very limited. Ideally, we need a comprehensive measure which will account for both situational and individual factors. So you could suggest some sort of integration also in the conclusion of this paragraph. Finally, if we look at idiographic versus nomothetic approach, both are nomothetic because both are highly standardized skills meant to be answered by large number of individuals at a time. So if a health researcher is using it, they can administer it to several participants, hundreds or thousands of participants in the same study. If a health psychologist is using these skills, they can administer them to lots of patients or clients who are consulting them. So definitely nomothetic approach. But for analysis, of course, we can talk about how an ideographic approach would also be helpful. So as a counterpoint, we can put that. So for example, taking a nomothetic approach and standardizing scoring, like especially on the SRRS, again, if someone has undergone this event, this is how much score we'll give them. So we'll assume that this is how much life change must have taken place. We'll attribute these many LCUs to them. That overlooks individuality in experiences, individual differences in experiences, which an ideographic approach could have brought about. For example, if one individual is divorced, it might be causing them a lot of stress because they have undergone significant negative changes in their life, like losing the partner, ridicule from society, losing out maybe monetarily on their investments or something. Whereas for another person, it might be a matter of relief from stress that they were undergoing in the marriage. Divorce could mean for them finally having some freedom, having a better financial position than before if they were being restricted by their spouse in some way. So when we take a nomothetic approach and we make blanket assumptions that the same events must be influencing every individual in the same way, that is a very limited perspective, which could be prevented from taking an ideographic approach. That would have brought about, because we would consider every case singly, it would have brought about how a particular event is impacting a given person, what is their unique experience of that particular event. So that is my 10-mark answer. I hope this lesson has been helpful to you in understanding how to answer section C. And next video will be about section D, organizational approach. That will be the final video for paper 3 of October November 24. Then we'll move towards paper 4, and in which we will look at key study questions and designer study questions, again one by one from clinical to organization. So do keep watching the videos on this channel, and I'll see you very soon.